Well, welcome. If you remember last class, we introduced the bank, which is known as the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, or what we'll refer to always simply as the Fed. And the Fed is the bank for the banks. And by banks, I mean little lowercase b-a-n-k-s, and that would be the banks that you and I deposit our money in. That system of banking in the United States is called a fractional reserve banking system. It is called fractional because every time you deposit money in the bank, granted, at this point in history, I've been able to withdraw that money, but it's not actually the exact same bills that I put in there. It's probably somebody else's money. And I know most of you are thinking, well, why does it matter? As long as I get money in, I get money out, then I think I'm good to go. Well, that is true, but just remember that is not a safety deposit box. What you are getting is other people's money, which is constantly people putting money into the bank and people putting money out of the bank. Is there ever a chance that perhaps there could be what is historically known as a run on the bank? The answer is yes, absolutely. Which is why at this point in time, the federal government, the state governments really want to assure that the economy, even though it clearly is going through a correction right now, nonetheless, our financial system and the dollar itself is sound. So let's explore a little more about what is called a bank. Number one, if you've taken a financial and or any of the business classes, you should have recognized there's something a bank must maintain, which is called a balance sheet. Those of you from mathematics know that the left side and the right side truly are equal only if they are the exact same, meaning they are in balance. So there's two types of claims against all of the assets, meaning the bank, the property of the bank, the capital of the bank, the machinery of the bank, and more importantly, all those dollars that are put into the bank. One is the dollars themselves. Those are you and I. We are considered a liability to the bank because we have a claim on all those monetary assets that we put into the bank. It's not their money. It is our money legally. At the same time, there are people who own the bank. They are the shareholders. In theory, they have bought stock and the money has been used by the bank. That money is also a pool of assets to the bank. So at all times, the bank must be able to account for this, be the sum of those two. Notice at times you and I do withdraw money in the bank, which means the right side changes and the left side changes at the same time. And it is an extremely laborious process. Thank goodness for technology, no doubt about that. And any time, of course, a bank could be audited to make sure that all of their assets are equal to their liabilities and the net worth. At the same time, I just want to make sure you're clear. All your money is not really at the bank. And by that, I mean if every single one of the depositors at any of your banking institution was to go today and request every single penny they've deposited to be given back to them, well, that would be a problem. The money's simply not there. Now, there is money in the vault, and actually the bank has deposited some of the money at their bank, which is the Fed. And for Colorado, that would be the local Federal Reserve Bank's district is in Kansas City, if you ever wondered. The Fed and barbecue, what could be better? Oh, those Kansas City Chiefs. I guess there's a third thing, no doubt about that. But by law, a bank must maintain a certain percentage of all of those checkable deposits. Once again, that's money you and I have put into the bank. They must have them on hold in the vault, and or they must have them at the Fed. That is the law. Now, banks determine they don't have to keep exactly what that percentage is. It all depends. Are banks more aggressive in what would they do with their assets? Or perhaps are they much more conservative with what they do with their assets? Well, just like any other business, that's up to the business to decide. Just like, let's say, Taco John's is going to determine what sort of new food they're going to roll out, how much they're going to keep of some meats as opposed to other meats. Those are all just business decisions, and you never should forget a bank is just that. A bank is a business. A banker responds to the demands of their customers. Banks are trying to always maintain a positive profit. Remember, in a system of capitalism, profit is a wonderful thing, but profit is calculated by calculating all the revenue that the bank brings in. That's money it makes by selling its goods and services. They must subtract all the costs, which are expenditures leaving the bank. They must pay for the labor. They must pay for those beautiful cookies and coffee as you stand in line and you enjoy. No doubt about that. So let's say that you and I, or better yet, you graduate with a PhD in economics from George Mason, come back to myself and let's say Mr. Curran and say, you know what, I think I have a great idea. I've noticed that people willingly would pay you, meaning us, to keep their money safe. And I noticed that they don't often come to retrieve it. Let's do something. I have this idea. It's called a startup bank. Now, of course, what do we need? Well, what does you need to have any startup business? You definitely need money, people. So we pitch an idea and we sell our idea. And in exchange for, let's say at this point, $250,000, we give stock. So now what we notice is that we have in our bank assets, which are in a form of cash, to the tune of $250,000, except that $250,000 is actually owned by the shareholders themselves. In this case, it would be called the net worth. Notice the balance sheet is definitely balanced. And that's the key thing, it is balanced. But at this point in time, we are doing nothing with their money. And of course, us being entrepreneurs like we are, we have full intention of making consumers happy. Next step. Well, the next step is to take some of the financial assets, which was the $250,000 in cash, and we actually must have a bank. We need tellers. We need perhaps a drive-through. We definitely need lollipops, as every young kid will tell you. So what we do is we take some of that cash and we put it in a less liquid, notice I used the word liquidity, less liquid form, the form of property. So what has changed? Well, the nature of the assets have changed, but the balance sheet still is balanced. Notice if the stockholders wanted their money back, all we have at the moment is $10,000. So needless to say, we have a problem, but that's okay. Look at them. They looked at us in absolute confidence because we have a great spokesperson, no doubt about that, and a great idea. So what's next? Well, the next thing, of course, is to find people deposit money in the bank. So notice, along came Everyday Joes, and they deposited $100,000 into the bank. So now we have $100,000 of cash with $10,000 left over from the stock shares, which added up to $240,000 worth of property. So notice now the stock shares are the net worth. Those are claims by the owner of the bank. The checkable deposits are liabilities. Those are claims that people have deposited money in the bank. So here's a good question. What has happened to the total supply of money at this point in time? Let me make some adjustments so you can see it. I can never get rid of that branding. Such is life for me. Well, the nation's total supply of money has not changed at all. It's just in different spots. So in this case, instead of it being in our pockets, we simply put it in the bank. You see it? Sorry about that. In this particular case, instead of having their money, they've bought into stocks and we have the cash. Some of the cash is in the form of cash, 10,000. Some of the cash is in the form of property, simply less liquid. The overall supply of money in the United States has not changed at this point. Two things to know. Number one, it is the assets right here that the bank itself uses to pursue goals. Well, number one goal, of course, is profit. Profit is awesome. So many ways a bank can make profits. Number one, it makes loans. And I know you guys would think the most common loans a bank perhaps sells are car loans for you, for your parents, probably house loans. If you get lucky one day, maybe a boat loan to buy that overpriced boat you rarely use, and it's a money loser, but man, you look good in it. Sadly enough, some of you may be going there for student loans, no doubt about it. In other case, banks buy what are called securities, and we're going to take a look at what a security is in the upcoming day. But anyways, typically, loans and securities are the two major ways that banks make money. And by make money, I mean that they are able to make a profit. Now, the irony, of course, is they're making loans and buying securities with your money. And we'll talk more about that. But it is your money. Maybe after this video, you're a little concerned and you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going right now and I am going to get my money back. Well, to be a good business, banks must respond to their consumers. They must be relatively liquid, meaning when I walk in there, I know I can get my money. And with that sort of confidence, I'm less likely to walk in there and ask for my money. But there's always a chance, especially when financial times are difficult for the overall economy as opposed to an individual investor. And there is no denying we might be at one of those moments just right now. Your parents probably have lived through them around 2005. My grandparents might have been your great grandparents, were children of the Depression, so they definitely could talk to you about that. At the same time, we talked about the old gas crisis in the late 1970s. That was pretty tough financial times too. It certainly does vary. One other thing that banks can do to make money is, since their money is sitting at the Fed in Kansas City and other banks may be a little short of what are called required reserves, is that banks lend other banks money. And that money are called the federal funds. And they're loaned in what is called the federal funds market. And other banks must pay an interest rate called the federal funds rate. If you remember from our previous lecture, there is something called the discount rate. The discount rate is the interest rate the Fed charges banks to borrow money. Well, now we have the federal funds rate. It is the interest rate that banks pay other banks to borrow money. And we're going to develop these more and more as we go and take a look eventually at what is called monetary policy, which is a topic for another day.